did it once, you're going to do it again, aren't you?
Can try.
15 seconds, please. During what months of pregnancy does a woman begin to look pregnant?
September.
Something... Oh. Luckily, the clock doesn't start until I finish the... September, of course. It's so obvious, isn't it?
Hey Internet, Worldview Everlasting here, your favorite YouTube addiction. And it's Friday, and you know that means Ask the Pastor 2.0, and we've got quite a question ahead of us today, so I'm not going to spend too much time goofing around. It's a question that is of momentous importance to both, really, Western civilization as we know it, to the church as we live within Western civilization, and to you, wherever you are in whatever stage of life you may be in. It's also a question which the standard Lutheran answer, which we do draw from Scripture and also based upon the tradition of the fathers, has not exactly been the normal answer in most church circles in the last 30, 40, 50 years. A lot of this has to do with the prevailing winds of our day, the culture and times, and, well, who we think is cool and who we're listening to, whether our worldview is being formed by the world outside or by the Scriptures. It doesn't mean that everything I'm going to say today is like doctrine, truth, to the point where if you don't accept any piece of it, you're a sinner and you're not in the church. This is a place where there is some room for discussion, so I'll be giving a lot of my own viewpoint and opinion today in attempts to answer what is a very honest and sincere question about a very difficult yet important topic. What do you say we go?
Email.
Dear Revfisk, I have noticed from your videos you challenge the cultural influences of dating and casual relationships among the church's youth. What would be your advice to the 17 to 20-something group of people navigating the dating courting scene? I've talked openly to a young lady who will be starting college soon. Her questions were, how do I know if he is the one, and how far is too far physically? I am also looking for resources that operate from a Lutheran framework focused on this topic. Any recommendation? Also, what are your thoughts on arranged marriages, marriage at a younger age, meaning early 20s, as opposed to mid-30s, and finally the idea of soulmates. Thank you so much. So what would be my advice to the 17 to 20-something group that's about to head into, or really has been in, the dating scene for like 3 or 4 years already? As a Christian, first, and this really kind of sums up my entire advice, don't date. Try to get married. And by that, I don't mean rush it, force it, or do it before you graduate from high school. What I mean is change your worldview about marriage away from what the outside world has told you is cool, normal, and right to what is actually a Christian worldview. Today's American worldview with regards to dating assumes, even before it begins, that marriage will not be the normal outcome. The goal is all about right now, the moment, the next thing. As a result of this, the entire landscape of dating is ruled by the passions, human flesh, desire, physical attraction, and lust. This view of relationships teaches you to look at other people as objects, as something you can either use or not use, possess or not possess, get or not get. So you'll ask questions about your relationship like, will he make me happy? Or do I think she's hot? And if I get with girl A, will I miss chance to also get with girl B? This is straight up condemnable as an early form of orgyism or multiple partner practice, adultery, so to speak. But more helpful than just condemning something is to try to see how absolutely unhelpful this way of looking at people and relationships is if they hope to eventually be in a monogamous, fidelity-based relationship that is one-to-one and you stay there. It's kind of comparatively like eating nothing but cake and cotton candy your entire life and then suddenly having to try to learn to eat caviar and filet mignon. Or maybe like smoking cigarettes, which you've done for the last 15 years, and every day of it you've said, well, I'll quit tomorrow. You can't, because you won't. And that's because this worldview, this habit, this practice sets in place a pattern within relationships, and that pattern is hard to stop. And this pattern consists of two main realities. One, other people are objects for you to use. And two, all relationships end. All of this is without even beginning to talk about the emotional side of things. I'll try to come back to that in a minute. But first, I say, don't date. Don't even try. If you see a sign that says, landmines ahead, why walk through the field? Now, there's another movement called the courting movement, and it does come with a lot of baggage. I'm really not familiar with much of its literature. But what I can tell you is what we are teaching my 3 daughters about how our family will practice their marriage. My daughters are 6, 3, and 1, and we got a boy on the way. But what we are already and have been since their earliest age teaching them is that one day we are going to find a husband together. That is, one day there will be men who will find them interesting and want to marry them for the sake of having a family together. And then they and us together will get to know those men. This idea which we're teaching within our family is based on the theology of headship which is found in the scriptures, especially Ephesians chapter 5. But it's also just common sense. Our family is our community. We have relationships. We live together, we work together, we grow together. Marriage, if and when that happens, will bring another person into that community for the sake of further growing that community even more. And this is a really good thing. But truly, and this is the lie of American culture, it is not any one person's decision. It is a lie of the world that marriage is defined as two people who love each other. That is not written anywhere in scripture, and it's really not based on any kind of common sense. Marriage is about two people in committed, permanent relationship in order that they might be of greater benefit to their communities and to each other, so that man does not have to be alone. But this is not just about them too. This is about the whole and what they will bring to that whole as they increase the family. Now, does that mean I'm talking about arranged marriage? No, not in the sense you've heard it talked about before. Not really. Arranged marriage, at least as it is mocked in the history books, is when two parents meet to haggle over the trade value of their children, marrying them off for a few dollars or a treaty. And that is not what I'm talking about at all. When I say that a young person's decision to marry isn't his or her own decision alone, that doesn't mean they have no say in it whatsoever. I mean, here, just try to picture it. My daughter says, "Hey Dad, I really like this guy. He's nice." So I say, let's have him over for dinner. How about family game night? He comes over and we all start to get to know him. We enjoy leisure together, but we also address his own issues of worldview, how he views faith and family. If things go well, he comes back next week. Things don't go well, he doesn't. Or let's change this up. Let's say I say, "Hey Trinity, I have this guy I'd like you to meet. I know his father and they're amazing people. And they're going to be in town next week." She says, "Hey, cool father. Is he a Lutheran?" I say, "Duh." He comes over, but she can't stand the guy. Enough said. And see, if I'm her father and I actually love her and know who she is, why in the world would I even try to introduce her to a guy who I know she's not going to stand? My job as her father is to help her see and make the best possible choice for the man who she's going to bring into our family, along with her mother and her sisters. Together, our worldview is that marriage is never about me, it's about us. And that is the foundation for a lifelong marriage. It is the complete reversal of the dating worldview. Now, I know this is already probably getting under the skin of a few people, and others are saying, "Oh, that's impossible, it'll never happen." And sad to say, most of those people are over 40 years old. No offense, just true. There is a common philosophy that has been extremely prevalent among the baby boom generation, and this is that parents actually have no influence over their children. I personally hear this all the time. When my first child behaved well at age 2 and then 3, I was just told, "Well, you got lucky, wait till the next one." That one turned out to be a sweet kid too. And so they said, "Whoa, boy, aren't you lucky." Now we're going on our 4th child and the monologue has changed a little bit. It's become, "Well, wait till they're teenagers." I'm not saying that some kids aren't headstrong. They are. And my kids certainly yell and complain and do all sorts of horrible stuff from time to time. And it's not that learning disabilities and special situations don't exist. They do. The problem is that an entire generation actually believes that it's impossible to raise kids. And as a result, sadly, a large proportionate number of them didn't even try. Now, I'm not saying this to attack anybody. The past is past, and as far as I'm concerned, it's forgiven. I'm saying this for the benefit of you, high school and college age kids, age 17 to 20, who are becoming adults and are watching this. And I'm telling you, the world of family life doesn't have to be this way. Yes, there's going to be sin, but marriage, relationships between Christians with their children do not have to be this way. Half of all marriages do not have to end up in divorce, as they do in the United States today. Children do not have to grow up reckless and rejecting every form of healthy learning from their parents. And the search for love does not have to tread through countless failed relationships and broken hearts. So, where does it change? For you, 17 to 20-year-olds, it starts by getting your rear to a good confessional Lutheran church where the pastor understands the difference between law and gospel and how it's applied. And don't just settle for showing up for the divine service. Get your rear into Bible study. Participate in the life. Learn what you believe and why you believe it. Make your sole priority number 1 the development of your worldview from your theological faith. Find the gospel and learn what it means. Live in the power of being forgiven. And then, second, don't let the world tell you how it is. Because the world, it don't know. It says it knows. It acts all hot and special and it's like, yeah, I know. But it's lying through forked teeth. And so start right here with this question. How do I know if he is the one, and how far is too far physically? If you're touching, it's too far. And I'm deadly serious. And I think it's doubly sad that the ones most not likely to believe me when I say this are the adults watching. Shame on you. Let me break it down for you. When you touch the hand of a person you're attracted to, two worlds start to collide. Around age 14, you have started to develop the need to procreate. God created you this way because God likes children, and in spite of our sin, He still thinks they rock. So He built you to need to make children and to enjoy the process, mostly. At around age 14, you start to realize this. But at first, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And amazingly, nobody's willing to talk to you about it. So it gets kind of confusing and frustrating. Well, by the time you're around age 18, whether you know it or not, or whether you're talking about it or not, as a human being, you're what the scientists would call in heat. Your hormonal brain development is screaming at you through your subconscious that now is the time to make babies. But the problem is that everything in our world, including in most churches, says now is the one time you're not allowed to make babies. And the result, generally speaking, in the United States has been that most teens find a way to make babies without making babies. And there's a number of hoops and backflips you can do to try to avoid nature, but there's no scientific way of denying what I just said about the process. But what this means is that what most of you teenagers experience when you think you're falling in love with that really attractive person is just your hormonal being in heat. I know that it feels like what the movies say is love, and I know those emotions are really, really strong. But the love you're falling into, the love your entire physiological universe is pumping for, is not a love that's about two people sharing a worldview and looking forward to raising children together in a very painful, struggling, dying world. The love you are feeling is not commitment, but passion. A passion that does not start in your mind or in your heart. It starts in your gametes. Go look that one up. So, keeping all of this in mind, what's wrong with holding hands with the guy you're just dating? Well, do you remember how much it hurt when the last guy you dated dumped you for that other girl? That's what's wrong with holding hands. That pain, that rejection, that despair you endured, all of that was heightened excruciatingly so because you had already begun the process of two becoming one flesh. And then, even at the start, even before it had gone all the way, you had the emotional side of that two becoming one sorely ripped apart. You had begun to unite not only your heart, but just barely your body to another human being in a bond which God created to last a lifetime, and which He created to result in a community of your own offspring. And then, right at the start, right as the passion was strong, you had it divorced. All those hopes, all those dreams, all those emotions were divorced. This is not divorce in the biblical sense, but the word does drive home the emotional point. How far is too far physically? When you're in that age bracket that scientifically is guaranteed to have you being in heat? It's a no-brainer, really. Let me put it this way. If you want to be clear-headed and sober in your thinking about making a decision for a good, lasting marriage, if you want to marry someone who's going to share your worldview, who's going to commit with you to true monogamy and growth together, who you're going to trust to be the parent of your children, the most surefire way to confuse your personal sense of judgment is to start those two worlds actually colliding before you're actually ready to go all the way, especially on a first or second date. And yes, I'm still talking just about holding hands. You know you want to hold their hand, and you know why you want to hold their hand. Because it feels good. Because those worlds are starting to collide. And that's precisely why it's dangerous. The most surefire way never to break the bad patterns in your life is to get physically and thus emotionally involved with another person without marrying them, without permanently committing to them for the rest of your lives. In the dating, you'll be suddenly blinded by your love. At that point, the entire world could be screaming at you, this man's gonna beat you, but you won't care. I can change him, you'll tell yourself. And the fact that you're already physically involved will be the glue that will hold shut the door to your self-control and your reason. So how do you know if he or she is the one? Oh gosh, be careful with that question. Here's a good checklist though for priority setting. 1, is he a Lutheran? And yes, this is a Lutheran video podcast. And I don't just mean, does he go to your Lutheran church? I mean, when you talk to him, does he believe and is he capable of confessing the 6 chief parts of your small catechism? Does he say that those are the most central truths in all the universe? If the answer is no, it's not that a marriage to him can't work. It could, but it's going to be a lot like running a race with one leg. Which is why if you start at the very beginning with this being priority number 1, you don't have to worry about it too much. It'll just be priority number 1. If you're already involved with him, touching his hand, cuddling up and kissing, see how much harder it gets? 2, if you have a healthy relationship with your father, and for you guys out there, really, if you have a healthy relationship with your mother, what does your father think of the guy? Conversely, if you have a terrible relationship with your father, does the guy remind you of your father? This is huge. You don't want that. Without getting into all the deep details of psychology, we have these habits built into us, and it's natural for us to try to fix the past through the present with these habits. That is, to try to justify our pasts in the present by doing the same thing again, hoping it works this time. But it's a bad idea. Bad, bad, bad. At the same time, Healthy, wise parents are absolutely your best asset when assessing whether or not a person is really a good match for you. Your parents don't have those gametes running wildly anymore, and generally they'll be able to see the situation more clearly than you, more objectively than you. Not always, but usually. And you can't see the situation clearly. You need to believe that. Trust your parents. And if your parents are absolutely untrustworthy, remember that you are now already attending a faithful Lutheran church, so spot out some family that's there every week, the ones who have a couple of young kids and look like they really care about what's going on, and get to know them. Ask if you can eat with them regularly, once a week or so, and begin to let their habits rub off on you. And then ask them what they think of this guy or that girl. How will you know if he's the one? That's it. I mean, I understand. It's important that you be able to be attracted to the person as well, but that one tends to take care of itself. It is important also that you're on a similar intellectual level, that your brains kind of work together, but those are the things you don't need to worry about. The things that don't come naturally are starting with a shared worldview and trusting the wisdom of your elders. Those are the things you need to work for. C.S. Lewis wrote this book called The Four Loves, which you really ought to read before you ever go on your first date. He said that true love, real, lifelong marriage love, is not two people staring deeply into each other's eyes. That's eros. That's lust. It always burns hot and it usually dies young. True love, fidelity love, is two people staring deeply in the same direction. Two people with the same vision, the same worldview, the same goals. And wrapped up in that same worldview, the same vision, the same goals is having the same view of marriage itself. Nothing is really more important short of the same view of Christ. What is marriage? What's it for? What is sex? Why did God give it to us and call it good? How you answer those questions and how your potential spouse answers those questions will go a long way. But I can't really say anything more than this. Don't marry from love. Marry for love. And by that I mean, don't get married because you think you already love somebody. Get married because you plan to learn to love somebody. Through the crosses you bear with each other, God is going to teach you what real love, fidelity love, unbreakable love really is. And first and foremost, it's not about you. It's not about how you feel. It's about the other person, the real other person, not the one you imagine they ought to be. It's about that other person's real human needs, real human weaknesses, real human shame that needs to be covered by your love, by your forgiveness, by your commitment. And it's about the other people that then you two together committed to reconcile constantly in relationship, affect by becoming part of the grander community. Thus standing together amidst the storms of the world and the chaos of this age. Your marriage is not about you, but about your neighbor, but about the vocation of serving together for the sake of the world, that we might confess Christ. This is where the idea that two become one, a head and a heart, bound together with hands and feet, and filling up the quiver with arrows for defending the faith with the sword of the Spirit throughout their lives, there's nothing more desirable to have as a Christian in the entire world, short of, perhaps, the gift of continent celibacy, which we won't get into here. It's a spiritual gift. Why don't they put that one on the spiritual gift inventories? But all of this said, I've given you more than plenty to chew on, and I know I haven't answered the question about early marriage. I kind of think it's hilarious that we call it early marriage. I mean, when something's only changed 40 years ago, where do we get off acting like it's always been that way? And like everything else is weird. We're weird. My advice is, however, get married as soon as you found the person that it's a good idea to get married to. If you found that person and then you put it off, you're just wasting your time. But keep this in mind when I say get married when you find the right person. I don't mean get married when you find someone you think you love. Get married when you find someone who shares your faith, shares your Christianity, loves both the law and the gospel, and will make a golden addition to the community in which you dwell. Learn to love that person, no matter what. The difficulty with this more normal view of marriage, which might lead someone to get married earlier than our late American style of marriage, is our American belief that our need for material assets and a constantly improving lifestyle gets in the way. See, we believe those are the things that really matter. What we have, what we own. That's the most important priority. Now, with the actual state of marriages in our country, you'd think we would wake up to just how poorly this experiment has gone. And yes, it is an experiment. Nothing I've said in this video is new. Nothing is anything I made up. It's just ancient wisdom. And by ancient, I mean anybody before 1950 would have thought it normal. No, not anybody. That's not fair. It's just what Scripture teaches and what the church has always taught. The new thing is what we now think is normal. And yes, it's about a generation and a half old. As for me and my house, we've been intentionally having nothing to do with it, and honestly, things have gone very, very well. Now, I don't mean that as a boast. I continue to pray, Lord have mercy. Oh, ever with my 3 daughters and my son. But nonetheless, where will He have mercy? In what is revealed about His will for marriage, and what is revealed about how the gospel is the center of marriage. Now finally and quickly, if you're a parent or a slightly educated young adult who wants a resource to start digging into this theology, a great place to start is St. John Chrysostom's On Marriage and Family Life. Finally, and maybe this is the best place to go first and foremost, is this edition, issue 6 of Salvo magazine. You can buy it on back issue online, called The State of Our Unions, which is, well, all about the state of our marriages. This magazine, if you're a young person, next to Higher Things as a Lutheran, is probably the best thing you could be getting to read regularly. I know ESPN is fun, and I know the food shows are cool, but this is worldview building right here. And man, they're on the ball when it comes to marriage and family life. All that said, I recognize it's been a hard topic, and I don't expect you to agree with everything I said today. However, you young people out there, you really need to let this percolate and think about these things. Don't let the world tell you what your marriage ought to be, because the world don't know.